Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's regional webinar on preparing to return to work from office presented by Spin.AI. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. Please note that this webinar will be recorded and will be made available to all attendees. If you do have any questions during the event, you may submit it in the GoToWebinar panel in the questions or chat section, and we'll follow up with you after the presentation. So now, please let me introduce our host for today, Darren Kimura, Executive Chairman for Spin.AI. I'll now hand it off to Darren. Darren, take it away.
Hey, Jeremy, thanks a lot for that introduction. Hi, everyone. As Jeremy mentioned, I'm Darren. What we're doing here is a series of webinars on the concept of returning to work. And today's webinar, we're going to be talking about how do you prepare your business for a return to your office by your employees. So again, what that means is, employees had been working from home for a long time. Now they're coming back to the office. How do you go about preparing for that? And this is a series of webinars. So tune in every week. We'll have a new topic and we'll talk about the different subjects that come up in this context. A little bit about Spin.AI. We were founded in 2016. Our corporate headquarters is based in Palo Alto, California. We have over 45 employees scattered all around the world. But many of them based here in California, which is where I am. What we are doing at Spin is really developing our technologies to provide cloud data protection in the new cloud era. We're talking about cloud-enabled software, cloud compute, cloud processing. And based on our platforms, we already protect over 1.5 million global users. One of the things that we do, however, in that protection and across that large customer base is we engage with a lot of businesses on a regular basis. In many cases, hundreds of businesses every single week. And what we hear from them directly are their concerns, their issues, their challenges. And as a result of that and that feedback, we gather all of that up here and try to figure out ways to help you run your business more efficiently. So that's what we've done here today. What we've done is brought in an expert, Cleo Valoroso, who is an expert in human resources. And Cleo had previously worked with companies like Express Scripts and the IKEA Group, and is currently working with various software technology companies around Silicon Valley. Because of this, she has direct exposure to what companies like yours are going through right now as they're preparing for their employees to come back to work. Cleo is currently sheltering in Mountain View, California. And one thing I know about Cleo is she's a pit bull lover. So welcome, Cleo.
Thank you, Darren.
Great. So in preparation for our topic today, what we've done is we've sat around and really kind of thought through the different stages of preparing. And what we've come up with are these 4 stages. The first one being setting guidelines, the second one being preparing your physical environment, the third one being reminding and maintaining your employees, and the fourth one, preparing your digital environment. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually talk you through each of the different sections here and have Cleo provide some feedback based upon her actual experience in doing these things for different companies that she works with. So the first one is the guidelines, and I think this is probably one of the more important pieces, especially right now. This is setting up the rules for your organization to prepare your employees as they come back to work. And some of the concepts that we filtered up were things like masks and social distancing, and how do you address working from home versus working from the office. Things like meetings and how do you greet someone. And where do you have breaks and lunches, et cetera, and how do you deal with visitors? So what we're going to do is we're going to actually take a deep dive here and actually get into some of these topics specifically. So let's start with masks. So Cleo, this is actually directed to you. My question to you first is, obviously there's a large debate globally, nationally, city and state about masks. Some people like them, some people don't. Some people won't wear them. Some people have mandated them. Governments in some cases have mandated them. What's your take for small technology companies, medium-sized technology companies on the topic of masks?
Great. So I think before, I answer that as a yes and no, right? Having a mask policy in place is incredibly important as it removes any uncertainties, from your employees' perspective when you're asking them to return back to work. I do recommend that you check your state guidelines and your local municipality jurisdictions to make sure that you are abiding with your local regulations. But definitely having a policy, regardless of mask on or off, should be established before you even get into the other items that you need to work on regarding, bringing back your employees. Again, it removes any uncertainties from your employees' perspective and any unnecessary stress or duress from their part.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think addressing it, having a policy makes it easier for people to feel better about getting back to work.
Absolutely.
So what's your take on masks? Yes or no?
Yes, I think it's just an extra layer of protection when it comes to your business, and ask people ask people to return to your workplace and have them in common areas, possibly that where they're going to be interacting with folks. However, if they are sitting alone on their desk and just coding or answering emails, whatever that may be, then it is quite uncomfortable to wear a mask pretty much the whole day while you're working. So perhaps have some rules around that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It really does directly address the question when to wear them. So I think what I heard you say is, for example, going from your parking lot to the building, wear the mask. If you're sitting at your desk, maybe not so much, depending on your environment and how close you are with others. If you have to get up and go to the restroom, put the mask on. Does that kind of sound about right?
Yeah, absolutely. As you interact with other folks in the office that are coming by, obviously, if you're about to see some other person coming your way, perhaps wear the mask, just another safety precaution. I think at this new era that we're in, no one will take offense to that at all. I think if anything, your coworker would thank you for thinking of them as you think of yourself as well.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I like the fact having the rules of engagement put out in front allows you to feel more comfortable about, for example, kind of
Absolutely.
putting on the mask, because that's the acceptable behavior in the office. So that makes sense to me. Now, with regards to what's acceptable, there's all kinds of masks out there, right? There's disposable masks, the ones people are making at home. I mean, what's your take on what's good?
I think any face covering really works. I think the problem right now is that even if you wanted to get, your hospital grade mask, your N95 mask, it's quite difficult to obtain those right now. As companies are selling them, they're obviously prioritizing hospitals and your healthcare facilities and whatnot. So I think your homemade mask is suffice, or anything really to cover your face as you maybe interact with somebody and well within the office space, right? So I think any face covering should be okay to put on as you again ask your employees to return back to work.
Now, if you use one of those masks that you make at home, I mean, I think you should probably be washing them pretty regularly, right? I mean, is there a recommendation for that?
I mean, I recommend that, as obviously you've been wearing it the whole day or out and about and, doing your, maybe different errands that you might have to do. I do recommend that once you get home, perhaps wash that immediately, hand wash it and air dry it. I think it's also best maybe to have a few of them just laying around just so you can have an extra. And, you'll always have one at hand. As you know, most businesses right now, are requiring masks to even enter their facilities, even for grocery shopping. And some states actually even require that you wear a mask, specifically here in California. So, I think having a few of them laying around as extra would just, just another precaution for you to make sure that you are, safe, that you're keeping yourself safe and you're keeping others around you safe as well.
Got it. Okay. So one question I did have was, the awkwardness of seeing someone for the first time, greeting them. In the past, we would do things like, high fives or handshakes or whatever, depending how well you know the person. I want to kind of show you some pictures and get your take on them. Sure. With regards to what is the most appropriate type of greeting. So this is what we used to do in the past, right? Handshaking. What's your take on this?
Before the shelter in place and before this whole thing happened, right, the way we socialized at work obviously was completely different. And now there's just some new rules. While the handshake seems like a thing of the past, I'd say that, for now, absolutely not. I think it increases, the risks, not just for yourself, but for the person you're shaking hands with.
What happens if someone extends their hand? What would you suggest?
I
I can
think if
see
if
that
if,
happening a
if
lot.
you were if you were to extend your hand to me right now as we speak, I would just politely decline it, or maybe do what I think other people are doing now, where they're bumping elbows or something like that, or even just doing the fist.
Well, I mean that makes sense, you know. So this is the elbow bump. What's your take on that?
I think that's acceptable if you really absolutely feel the necessary need of greeting somebody, just maybe for awkwardness sake or whatnot. And so, some people, I think depending on how close knit your office is, may have that already culture already in place where they, greet each other with a handshake or a hug or whatnot. So I think for now, as we continue this new norm, I think an elbow bump is completely acceptable.
Okay, well, this is the way we greet each other at Spin. We do a little foot tap. What do you-
That's definitely on something I've personally never seen. But hey, if that is something that you would want to do with your coworker because it's completely and perfectly acceptable, hey, why not? I mean, it again removes the awkwardness from people handshaking, and at least you're greeting each other in a nice, cordial manner.
I think probably the one I like the most is just the nice hi. It's like what we do in these web
Or maybe
calls
just a
now.
wave.
Hi, bye. Yeah, just kind of a air wave. So good. Now meetings. Meetings are physical meetings. These are meetings like in a conference room and whatnot. I
Hmm.
think meetings are going to become pretty important and they've been efficient. That's the reason why we've done it for all these years. No question, we should push for virtual meetings first. I completely get that.
Absolutely.
But what happens if you're in the office and you have to meet?
I do think, it is definitely much easier to have a conversation with somebody to talk about a topic in person. Even when you're in the same office, right? I do agree with you that I would push for a virtual meeting first. However, if that is not necessary for whatever reason, or not absolutely, or you needed to meet with your colleague in person, I do suggest that you keep a distance, between each other. So, for instance, if you had a conference room that used to fit 12 people, that might be reduced to 5 or 6 to make sure that you are, socially distancing while even in your meetings, right? And then maybe if there's other people that needed to join, then perhaps ask them to join virtually, even if they're literally sitting at their desk. I think it's just a good precaution to make sure that we are ensuring that the workspace that they're coming back to is as safe as possible.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's unfortunate that we have to have the 6 feet social distancing in place, but it works, and that's the reason why it's there. So maybe even going as far as taking out some of those extra chairs from that conference room in advance before people get back to the office makes sense. So that way they're not feeling obliged to kind of
Yeah.
fill in all the chairs that are there. That's cool. Great. Now, as we shift over to preparing the actual physical environment, some of the things that we came up with were like clear the air filters, HVAC, right? Your heating, ventilation, and air
Yep.
conditioning system, cleaning the air filters, making sure that housekeeping is coming in more frequently and that they're actually doing, disinfection of things like mouses, keyboards, knobs, things of that nature, and other things. So we're going to take a deeper dive here. Here are some pictures of things I know you've implemented. So can you kind of explain what's
Yes.
going on in these?
Sure. So one of them to your left, that would be your touchless hand sanitizing station. So we've put them everywhere. I think having them in place lets your employees know and reminds them that, hey, if you aren't unable to wash your hands immediately for whatever reasons, most especially if they're coming from outside and touch multiple surfaces even before they got to work, I think having a touchless hand sanitizing station is quite important to have, just to remind them that, hey, again, if they cannot wash your hands for whatever reason immediately, that is at least available to them. I mean, after all, you've already seen this, right? In hospitals, this is not something new to us. It's probably new to the offices, but in places like hospitals, healthcare facilities, they have them there for a reason, to reduce the spread of any bacteria or germs. And I think just having that around your work area or your office is it's a good reminder to employees that you're not only that you're reminding them to wash your hands, but also to the fact that, hey, we're thinking about you in that sense, right? That you're keeping them safe.
Where do
The
you
next
recommend?
picture you have. Sorry?
Oh, I was just gonna ask you on that hand sanitizer. I mean, having one for a massive office isn't gonna be good enough, right? Where do you recommend those be distributed? I would think like
I mean,
entryways, maybe by the restroom, perhaps.
yeah, I think, I think it's important to put them on your entryways. Absolutely. As people come in, they see them right away. They can sanitize their hands. Perhaps they touch something else outside that they weren't even aware of. By the restroom, I would say, I'd put them near your break room or your coffee area if there's one. Definitely outside your meeting space, or
Yeah,
inside your meeting space even.
that makes sense. Great. Yeah, and I think you're gonna explain what's going on the right.
So what's going on there, right? That is a touchless keyless entry. I think that's another great thing that people can do. Absolutely, if you have the means to do it as well, right? You know, people have been giving, or maybe your employees have keys or key cards, and that's another thing that they have to touch, that perhaps they have to sanitize later and think about, right? So the less, I think, items that they have to think about to get to work, I think it is better. So having a keyless entry such as that one, where your key is literally in your phone. I mean, who doesn't carry their phone nowadays, right? It eliminates that one more risk of having something else contaminated that could possibly contaminate your workspace.
Yep, I think that's a great idea. I mean, to your point, everyone's got a phone these days, and if you go to hotels, for example, a lot of times you can actually get keyless entry, I guess now, where you have the application on your phone, unlock your guest room from your phone. Same
Absolutely.
thing. Yeah. Now, this is something I've
While I
seen
have
done. Go ahead. Sorry, were you gonna add something else
I'm
to that?
sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna add that, while I have to say for your keyless entry, they're not quite the cheapest solution, absolutely, but from a long-term solution later on, I think it does pay for itself if you do decide to invest in one.
What would you say an average cost might be? I mean, just give a range. I realize different doors have different costs, but what would you expect that to be
Um,
around?
from what I've seen that we've installed, in our offices, I would say somewhere between 5 to 7 thousand.
Okay, so it's a meaningful investment, but one that
Yes,
pays
I
for
mean,
itself over long. Got it.
absolutely.
Now, on the image that you have on your screen, I've seen this done in like supermarkets, for example, where they actually have arrows telling, uh, you know, shoppers, this is the way of flow. Don't go the other way. It's a one-way street here. So is that what I'm seeing?
Yes, that is absolutely what you're seeing. This traffic pattern is not something new either. If you've ever been to an IKEA, you've probably seen those arrows somewhere. However, at that store, obviously, that's designed to keep you in the store. In this case, this is designed to show you how to get to one place to another. Most especially if you have a lot of people in the office, it helps your employees know which pattern they should take to avoid any congestion, and more importantly, any kind of confusion on who needs to go first if they bump into a coworker, and what if they're not wearing their mask as you had mandated because they thought they were alone in their office. So I think having a traffic pattern um, helps their situation. However, I have to say, putting traffic patterns like this is something your employees will have to get used to. However, I think, if you put that as a policy or a rule that these hours need to be followed, most especially if the office is it's at capacity, I think that's something your employees will thank you for later, as it will definitely eliminate some congestions in the common areas.
It works at supermarkets, so I can see it working in the office. It reduces the uncertainty, right? It makes them know, okay, you know what? No standing here. Let's keep moving this pattern, moving this direction.
Absolutely.
One thing that I did really like, I know, is that you've done some of these kind of welcome back kits. So talk to us about
Yes,
this.
absolutely. So, you have to think about from an employee who's hearing a lot of uncertainties, from the news and whatnot. And the last thing you want them to think about is that, is it really safe to come back to work? And if so, what items would my employer provide to me, right? So we thought about giving, employees this, welcome kit package, if you may, that contains a hand sanitizer, some antibacterial wipes so they can re-clean their areas if they feel that it was necessary, a bunch of disposable, masks, just in case they don't have any reusable ones on hand. Also, that glove that you see, that's a reusable antimicrobial glove. that they can use not just indoors while they're at work. They can text with it and whatnot. They can also use it while they're grocery shopping, so they have less contact with any surface that could potentially harm them. And then another thing that we'd put there and we thought about is that, you wash your hands now maybe more than you've ever done in the past few years, right? And now you're sanitizing also your hands like crazy. And as you do that, your hands do it. It will dry. Um, so keeping your hands moisturized is just as important because you don't want any breaks in your skin that could potentially lead bacteria to come in.
Now, what's that silver object on the top?
Oh, that is actually I totally missed that. That is actually a keychain that lets you open doors, so you don't have to touch any handles on the doors. ATM pads, another thing you may have to go to the ATM, get some cash. You don't have to touch the keypad. I mean, do they really clean it? And you can pull and push the door with that, so it serves all its purpose.
Kind of works hand in hand with the keyless entries. Even with that, you unlock the bolt, but you still have to open the door. With that,
Absolutely.
You can just kind of clasp on and pull. I got it.
Yeah.
Great.
And pull it.
That's cool.
You can even use it in your car, actually. your door handle. Oh, you're in your door handle.
Okay. I know one thing that was important to you especially was to keep the communication going, to continually remind and maintain these practices. I think a lot of companies can get them spun up, but how do you make sure that they're enforced over time? So
Absolutely.
Can you explain to us step 3?
Absolutely. So I think ongoing reminders to your team, either via email on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, or even maybe a Slack channel, for folks that's dedicated to communicating maybe tips, changes, new expectations, changes in the policy, so on and so forth, is absolutely important. This way, you don't have a workforce that's coming in knowing that, okay, this is it, this is the new rules, and then what, right? What if something changes based on your local, state, or county jurisdictions, right? Based on the laws. Also, obviously, now that you have a bunch of sanitizing stations, they are touchless. They do have batteries, so I do suggest that you calendar that to make sure that it's always filled and the batteries are actually working, so it's serving its purpose. And also, there are some signs that the government does require to put. For instance, there's a FFCCR poster that you can download directly from the Department of Labor, which will give not just further guidance to you as an employer, but it also gives the employees what they need to know about what's going on. And obviously, there's a lot of information on the CDC website, which you have the link there, where you can get more information to provide your employees that may not know new things that have changed and any new news that pertains to reopening your offices.
Great. I think the calendaring comment makes a lot of sense for pretty much everything. Things like even the filters in the air conditioning, which I hadn't really thought about before, but making sure that that's done more frequently and calendaring that makes a lot of sense too. So super helpful. Thank you. I mean, you've done all the thinking for us as a business operator. I'm running the business. I don't have the time to think about these things. Clearly, you've done that. So I appreciate that. We're also going to have a handout which we can provide to any of the viewers later, which will have your summary and your tips. Thank you, Cleo. This is great. Appreciate that.
You're welcome, and my pleasure.
Now, to protect the digital environment, we have David, a product manager at Spin, here with us today. And one of the things that we try to always do with these webinars is make sure that we bring some value, teach people things. And one of the things I learned in the preparation process was what a hamburger was for a website. So David, can you explain to all of us what a hamburger is for these websites?
Definitely, Darren. So hamburger is a web design term. It's an icon that opens a menu, a navigation bar, and it's 3 horizontal lines which looks like the shape of a hamburger. So it's coined the term hamburger.
And we've got that on the Spin.AI website, and I used to refer to it as those 3 lines, but now I can refer to it as hamburger. Thanks, David. Well, I'm glad you're actually the product manager of Spin1. As opposed to our website. So with that being said, David, love to hear what you have to say about protecting the digital environment.
Definitely. And the first thing is that this pandemic really highlighted how necessary cloud productivity apps are, especially in the case where you and your employees have to work remotely. And the 2 most popular of these cloud productivity apps currently being used are G Suite and Office 365. They basically allow users to share files, to set meetings, to send emails, while still being managed by the administrator of the organization. So in a sense, G Suite and Office 365 are the new normal now. Administrators can manage users within their organization. They can set policies, they can set restrictions, create groups. And the main advantage is that by using these cloud apps, these tasks can be done remotely from anywhere in the world. So for organizations who haven't already migrated to the cloud, now is the time. We're living in a very uncertain period and may have to shift between remote and office life. And by utilizing these cloud services, you will not lose any productivity, since users will be able to perform their necessary tasks anywhere. So now, once you have your data in the cloud, what I recommend thinking about next is protecting this data. Having data in the cloud with its ease of access may give that the impression that it's safe. However, the risk of data loss is always there. So an employee can accidentally delete important business documents, or an employee who's being terminated can decide to wipe all their emails. But regardless of the case, an automated backup solution is needed to protect businesses and their data. So what do you look at when you choose a backup solution? I have a couple of tips that I can recommend. When choosing a backup solution, it's important to have the flexibility on the frequency of backups initially. If you have an office with all your employees, just one time a day protection is enough, one time a day backup. But if you have offices in different time zones, for example, you'd want more frequent backups, such as 3 times a day, 4 times a day, to ensure the protection of all your files within a 24-hour span. It's also important to have the flexibility of choosing where your data is stored. So this is because at the end of the day, you're backing up your data to be able to recover on an as-need basis. So it's important to ensure that it is protected in a safe location. If you're utilizing G Suite in your organization, for example, your data is already in Google. So what we recommend is getting that second layer of protection and choosing between AWS or Microsoft Azure, for example. And this will provide that second layer of protection, therefore limiting any data loss or inaccessibility. And lastly, when choosing a backup solution, it's critical to test out their restoring capabilities. So when needed, you want to ensure that you can restore files to the correct users, to the correct locations, and that all of the files are actually successfully restored. And you also want to ensure that you can cross-restore between one user to another. And this can come in handy, for example, when an employee is terminated and you need to transfer all of their data to a new user. So make sure to test out the restoring functionality. Another side note that I have is I recommend looking out for solutions that provide snapshot backups. So this is what we personally call here at Spin a restore in time machine, where you're able to go back in time to what a cloud service looked like at an exact backup during a certain time. So this is much more powerful than an individual file backup, since it also incorporates folder hierarchies, file placements, and other metadata along with the backups themselves, which makes administration easier and data retrieval even easier. Now that you have set up a backup solution for your cloud services, what I recommend for administrators to focus on is protecting their organization against cyber risks. So unfortunately, data being in the cloud and it being able to be accessed from anywhere in the world so easily also brings some risks with it, especially for cyber criminals. Ransomware is the most prominent risk to watch out for, where these criminals are able to steal and encrypt data, requesting a ransom in return for decryption. And this can create a lot of issues, starting with downtime and then can also incur legal costs, compliance costs. So it is a very big issue. And currently in the market, there's 3 popular methods of detecting when a ransomware attack occurs in the cloud. There's signature-based detection, abnormal traffic, and file behavior. So the thing with ransomware is it's constantly evolving. We can wake up tomorrow to many newer versions and different algorithms. And the first priority is always being ready for new attacks. That's why signature-based protection is not recommended at all, since this is only for attacks that are currently known and have been discovered. Because in this case, once an attack occurs, we analyze it, we find out its footprint, we add it to our database, and stop this specific attack from occurring in the future. But if it's something new, then the footprint isn't recorded and nothing can be done. With regards to abnormal traffic detection, it can raise a lot of false positives, and it's a bit uncontrollable actually, especially with multitudes of users in your organization. So we have deemed it to be an untrustworthy method of detecting ransomware in the cloud as well. So from our experience and research here at Spin, we have came to the conclusion that analyzing file behavior is actually the #1 way in stopping ransomware attacks in the cloud. And this is actually how we protect organizations against ransomware here at Spin. Organizations need a solution that can provide 24/7 monitoring for activity in the organization with no human factor required. But besides monitoring and detection, these solutions also need to be able to stop the encryption of the data by removing the application that is causing the malware to spread. Having the monitoring along with this process of removing the application that's causing the malware to spread provides you with the complete protection against ransomware. And once you have the backup processes implemented, once you have the security process implemented, these are the best practices for your organization to ensure data safety and accessibility of your cloud data. And regardless of whether you're working at home or in the office, these policies are important regardless. So I recommend it, and it will definitely help you and your organization save a lot of time and money. That's it from me, Darren.
Great, David. I appreciate that insight. So Cleo, David, I think that wraps it up for today. I appreciate your time, your insight. Now we've helped our viewers prepare their organization for a return to workplace by their employees. Hopefully now this leads to stronger business, faster recovery for all of us. So on behalf of Spin, thank you very much. Jeremy, back over to you.
All right, thanks, Cleo, David, Darren. That was incredibly relevant and informative. And thank you out there for joining us as well. So once again, we'll post the webinar recording on our website, so you can visit www.spin.ai. But yeah, that includes our presentation. So we'll now end the session. Thank you.